So now we are into next segment of breathing and exchange of gases. The segment now that we are discussing is the exchange of gases. To recall what we have discussed in the previous class. In the previous class we have seen various respiratory volumes in the process of inspiration and in the process of expiration. In the process of expiration, how much of the air that is being brought into lungs, how much of the air that is being allowed out of the lungs, right? Different volumes that we have considered, and based on these values we have also considered the capacities, right? Respiratory capacities, right? 5 different capacities we have seen, 4 different values that we have seen, right? And now to calculate these values, where is this exchange of gases is taking place in the body? The primary sites of exchange in the body, to jump into the lesson. Yes, so here the primary site of exchange, the primary site of exchange of gases is alveoli, right? So the primary site of exchange of gases is alveoli. What gases are getting exchanged? The CO2 and O2. O2 are the gases which are getting exchanged here. The primary site of exchange of gases will be alveoli, right? And what other locations, right, the exchange will happen? The exchange also occurs in tissues. Right, as a result of cellular respiration. The CO2 is being produced in the tissues, and this has also need to be exchanged with what? Exchanged with blood, actually. Exchanged with the blood, that we're gonna see. So this is what we're going to be discussing. What are the various driving factors? What factors will influence this process of the exchange of gases? That is our discussion for today. So to explain one more time, exchange of gases, primary site of exchange of gases is alveoli, and the exchange also occurs in tissues. When we are discussing the introductory classes, I have explained the process of ventilation of gases or the process of exchange of gases can be external respiration or can be internal respiration. As a matter of fact, the exchange that is happening in the alveoli can be called as external respiration. Where the process that is happening at the alveoli can be external respiration. We're going to come back to this point. We are just in the introductory aspect of this part. Or you can simply refer it as pulmonary respiration. Both are same thing, right? The exchange that is happening at the alveoli is external respiration, or call it as pulmonary respiration. The reason you are calling it as pulmonary, because of alveoli which is present in the lungs. The exchange that is happening in the tissues, right? The exchange that is happening in the tissues, it is inside the body, so that is why it can be referred as internal respiration. Right, this can be referred as internal respiration or internal exchange of gases. Both are of same thing. Internal respiration or internal exchange of gases, or you can call it as systemic respiration, just like in the the blood circulation that you would see, pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. both are of same thing, systemic respiration. That means it is happening within the system. With the systemic arteries, the exchange will happen. So here the pulmonary capillaries will have a play in exchange of gases, here the systemic, and we'll come back to this. Right? So that is the aspect where the exchange of gases will take place, right? The primary exchange is alveoli, and it also happens in the tissues. And if it is happening in the alveoli, you would call it as external respiration or the pulmonary respiration. And if it is happening in the tissues, you would call it as internal respiration or the systemic respiration, right? So here the other important factor is factors influencing diffusion. Factors affecting diffusion or influencing exchange. Factors affecting this respiratory exchange. What are these factors? What is this factor is? One is the concentration of these gases. The concentration of gases. Right? The concentration of gases. That means the concentration of O2 and the concentration of CO2 in what? In mixture of gases. In mixture of gases, nothing but air. So you take in the air. Air is the mixture of gases. In the mixture of gases, how much of this concentration is there? Concentration is there. So based on this concentration, they exert some pressure. So this pressure exerted by these individual gases is called as partial pressure. What is partial pressure? The partial pressure is, so here the pressure induced or pressure exerted by individual gases in the mixture of gases in the air is called as the partial pressure. So here we are considering two gases, right? So partial pressure for O2. O2 will be PO2 and partial pressure for CO2. CO2 it will be PO2. So both means same thing. Essentially the partial pressure is nothing but the concentration of gases. The concentration of individual gases in the mixture of gases. Is the partial pressure. So that is measured as PO2 for oxygen and PCO2 for CO2. Right? PCO2 partial pressure for carbon dioxide. The next one. So this is one factor. That is influencing the exchange of gases. What is the other factor? That is solubility of gases. Right? Solubility of gases. That means how soluble, that is the O2, how soluble, that is CO2, in this mixture of gases will also determine the exchange potential of these gases. And the next one that we have is respiratory membrane. Respiratory membrane. What is this respiratory membrane? This is the membrane which allows the gases to be exchanged across this respiratory membrane. Because of the partial pressure, these gases will exchange by the process of simple diffusion or simple diffusion process. Right? Just like high pressure to low pressure, high partial pressure to low partial pressure. Simple diffusion principle. Simple diffusion principle. The gases will be exchanged from high partial pressure to low partial pressure across this respiratory membrane, right? So these three are very important driving factors for the exchange of gases to occur, right? What we have discussed is we are discussing the exchange of gases. Then we have identified the primary exchange location in the human body. So very important question, that is alveoli. Apart from alveoli, where the exchange occurs is the exchange occurs in tissues as well. And if the exchange is occurring in alveoli, you are calling it as external respiration. And exchange occurs in tissues, you would call it as the internal respiration. External respiration alternatively is pulmonary, it is systemic respiration. And we have seen the factors. What are the three important factors which are influencing the respiratory process is the concentration of gases in a mixture of gases. The concentration will determine the partial pressure of these gases, and we have seen the solubility of these gases and respiratory membrane, and we're going to discuss these three factors very importantly, right? These three factors. Now I'll just erase this and we're going to the details of these three important factors, right? Three important factors. What are the respective pressures for these gases at the different locations of the body, which is driving the process of the diffusion for the exchange to occur. Okay, so now please to remember these three factors are very important for the NEET exam. Yes, three factors are very important: concentration of gases, solubility of gases, and respiratory membrane. The concentration means the partial pressure. Now, the partial pressure. So, the partial pressure so this is measured at sea level. Right? So, here the availability of gases is different at the different levels. Say, for example, if you have gone to higher altitudes, the available gas is comparatively lesser because of the lesser pressure in the higher altitudes. We are measuring at the sea level. So this is measured in mmHg, right? Millimeters per mercury. So that is how we measure. So partial pressure of gases, within the body. So partial pressure at different locations, not necessarily the body, at the different locations. So partial pressure of, so we take partial pressure of O2 and CO2. Right? Partial pressure of O2 and CO2 at sea level, which is measured in mmHg. So here in the atmospheric air, for CO2 and we'll take PCO2 and we'll take PO2. Yes, atmospheric air. What is the partial pressure for carbon dioxide? What is the partial pressure for oxygen? So here for carbon dioxide it is 0.03. Yes, for oxygen 159 mmHg. You got to take mmHg. I am not writing this since we have mentioned this already. 0.03 mmHg. This is 159 mmHg. So from the atmosphere, where does this air go? It goes to alveoli, isn't it? It goes to alveoli. What is the next location? So all this mixture of gases via this conducting pathway are now being taken into the alveoli. So when it comes to alveoli, the CO2 is 40, right? 40 mmHg, 40 mmHg, and in here how much it is it is 104 mmHg, 104 mmHg for oxygen. So you are seeing the reduction here. Why the reduction here is, when you have taken the air in, it gets mixed with the existing air that is already there, which the existing air will have the CO2 as well, right? So that is where that nullifies it, that minuses it. So you got the 104 mmHg. So next, at the alveoli, it is getting exchanged by the process of diffusion. Now it has been placed in the blood circulation. The exchange happens in the capillary. Now, so it is in the now oxygenated blood. I just write with the red. Oxygenated blood. Why I am writing oxygenated blood here? Because at the alveoli, the blood is getting oxygenated. Right? So here the oxygen has come here to the alveoli, so it is getting oxygenated. Now what is the concentration? Here is, so here obviously the inspired air, the CO2 concentration is less. So it stays the same, that is 40 mmHg, but the O2 will be 95 mmHg. 95. So you are also seeing the reduction here in the process of exchange, and that is being exchanged. Some of it is being lost. So you have 95 mmHg. Now it is brought to the tissues for the exchange via circulation. So circulation, it is brought to the tissues. In the tissues, what is the concentration of these gases? What is the partial pressure of these gases? Right? That means in the tissues, so we are considering deoxygenated blood. So I am writing it, I am not erasing this one. Deoxygenated blood. The deoxygenated blood. So here, how much of the deoxygenated blood in the concentration in the deoxygenated blood here is the CO2. It is getting exchanged in the tissues. So that is why it is 45, and so here oxygen is just 40. The deoxygenated blood, oxygen is just 40. Yes. Now, so obviously in the tissues it will be same. The tissues, because of the cellular respiration, the CO2 is being generated. So it is 45, and this will be 40. So why I have written individually separately for you is, so that you will have to remember this individual concentration pressures are very importantly. That is why, so this individual representation is there for you. So the questions will be constantly being asked. So for example, when you compare with the atmospheric air, what is the pressure that is there in the alveoli? The pressure that is there in the oxygenated. Say for example, oxygenated blood will be there in the systemic arteries. What is the pressure in the systemic arteries? They will say. So say for example, the partial pressure in the systemic arteries for oxygen is 40 mmHg. I will say 40 systemic arteries. The partial pressure is 40 mmHg is wrong. This is 95 mmHg. So all of this is measured in millimeters for mercury. So these are the partial pressures, and these will drive the process of exchange, and this I'll explain in the process of a diagrammatic representation as well for you for easy understanding. So this has to be remembered very clearly. We'll just go through this one more time. The partial pressure is nothing but the concentration of gases The concentration of gases in the mixture of gases we are taking in the different locations. So we have taken in the 5 locations: atmospheric air, alveoli, oxygenated blood, deoxygenated blood, and tissues. Right? So deoxygenated blood. So just to have the uniformity, I'll just write this one more time. Deoxygenated blood and tissues, right? So that the colors got mixed up. Hopefully we are okay. Now atmospheric air, alveoli, oxygenated blood, deoxygenated blood, and the tissues. Partial pressures for CO2, partial pressure oxygen, atmospheric air 0.3. So this is 159, and alveoli PCO2 is 40, and 104, and oxygenated blood. So here the partial pressure for carbon dioxide is still 40, oxygenated blood, and here 95. Deoxygenated blood in tissues we have 45 mmHg. The reason there is increase here, right? The reason there is increase here is due to the cellular respiration that has taken place in the tissues. Now you are seeing the falling off the concentration, because the exchange has taken place in the tissues. All the oxygen that has been carried has been donated to the tissues, so that we have 40 mmHg of the pressure, lesser pressure in here. Okay, now we'll see. I just erase this. Now we'll go into the next part, that is the respiratory membrane. And these pressures are very important for the NEET exam. You have to be remembering them. So the next one that we have is the respiratory membrane. So this is also very important. The respiratory membrane. Right? The respiratory membrane, if you take, so this one is actually contains 3 layers. Right? The respiratory membrane contains 3 layers, and this is taken at the site of alveoli. Very, very important. The diagram, and as well as how many layers, what are the layers, all of this is important. So we are taking the alveoli. Yes, we are taking the alveoli. So alveoli is made of the tissue. What tissue? So alveoli is made of the simple squamous epithelium. So one layer cell thick only. So it is made of simple squamous epithelium, right? So what is this that we have here is, this is alveolar cavity. This is alveolar cavity. What is this one? This one is simple squamous epithelium. Simple squamous epithelium, which is very useful for the process of simple diffusion. Then we have, in the alveoli, we have the capillaries, blood capillary. So we are writing the blood capillary as well here. Okay. So we are taking the simple blood capillary. Yes. So within this blood capillary, what we have is, we have all these blood cells, RBC, which is very useful for the transportation of gases. Yes, transportation of gases. What are these capillaries are made of? Right, the capillaries are made of what kind of epithelium again? The capillaries are again made of simple squamous epithelium, isn't it? They are again made of the simple squamous epithelium. The capillaries are again made of simple squamous epithelium. So this is your respiratory membrane. So you have the simple squamous epithelium of alveoli, simple squamous epithelium of alveoli. one layer, and you have again simple squamous epithelium of capillaries. Right, simple squamous epithelium of capillary, and in between this, what we have? We have the basement membrane. In between we have the basement membrane. How many layers that we have got? We have got a total of 3 layers, isn't it? We have got total of 3 layers. There is simple squamous epithelium of alveoli, and we have basement membrane, and we have simple squamous epithelium of the capillary, and the exchange will happen. The gases will bound to the RBC, red blood cells. Red blood cells contains the hemoglobin, and the exchange will happen. And this diagram is very important for you. Right, this diagram is very important for you. What is this membrane is made of? Despite having 3 layers, right? Despite having 3 layers, it is just 1 mm thick. Right? But having these 3 layers is just as small as 1 millimeter. Right? Just as small as 1 mm thick. So this is the exchange membrane, respiratory membrane. So present at the alveoli. In the tissues, you have a simple squamous epithelium. Where the exchange will happen. And this diagram, this question is very important for the NEET exam. So this is the second factor. What is the third factor that is we have discussed? That is solubility of gases. So solubility of gases, we are taking 2 gases. So which of these 2 gases is more soluble? The gas that is more soluble is CO2. Right? CO2 is more soluble. How efficiently it is soluble is 20 to 25 times. 20 to 25 more when you compare with the more soluble when you compare with the oxygen. That is why the CO2 has more diffusion capability than the oxygen. Yes, these 3 factors. One is the partial pressures that we have seen in the previous explanation. Now the respiratory membrane, which is also very important, followed by the solubility of the gases CO2. And to explaining all of this, we have such a beautiful diagram coming up, which has been in our NCERT textbook itself. Right? So that is very important. If you remember that diagram, it's going to be very elaborately easy for you. We are taking the alveolar sac one more time. Yes, we are taking the alveoli. So alveoli. So in the alveoli, the gases. So this is the exchange membrane. So what is being brought in from the alveoli? The O2. Right? So O2 has come from the atmosphere. The O2 has been brought in. What is getting exchanged out? The CO2. The CO2 is getting exchanged at the site of alveoli, and this also will explain in the process of transportation of gases as well. And for this exchange to occur, what is more important? 3 factors are more important. Just now we have discussed the partial pressure in the alveoli. What is the partial pressure for oxygen? So here PO2 in the alveoli, how much? 104 mmHg, mmHg. What about CO2 in the alveoli? 40 mmHg. So here, we have got the capillaries, right? So in the capillaries, what is the partial pressure here? So here 40, so this side I will write. So 40 mm Hg. 40 mm Hg and 45 mm Hg. What is this? So this one is actually the pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery. What does pulmonary artery carries? It carries the deoxygenated blood. So deoxygenated blood from heart, carries the deoxygenated blood from the heart. That is why you have 40 mm Hg of PO2, 45 mm Hg of PCO2. Yes, so this is the thing. And now here, so this one will be the systemic. This one will be systemic. So that means, so here from the alveoli, so we got the pulmonary veins, no? So here we have the pulmonary veins. So the oxygenation has taken place. The oxygenation has taken place. Now, so you have 95 mm Hg for PO2 and 40 mm Hg for PCO2. Yes, for CO2. And now the exchange has taken place. Now it will be taken, right? So it will be taken where? It will be taken to the lungs. So I'm just instead of drawing lungs, I'm drawing 4 chambers. So I just write 4 chambers here, right? 4 chambers of the heart. So it has been brought here. So this one will be our right atrium. This one will be our right atrium, left atrium, isn't it? Then we have right ventricle, left ventricle. Now, so this one actually should come and join here, right? This one actually should come and join here, and so from here the blood will be pumped to the tissues. Yes, from the tissues okay, what do we have here? We have the tissues. So what is the pressure here? The pressure will be same, 95 mm Hg. So that is PO2, yeah, and 40 mm Hg. 40 mm Hg PCO2. From the tissues, what will be our partial pressures? So this will be same, PCO2, that is 45 mm Hg and PO2 40 mm Hg. The reason why I am writing all of this is for it to be very clear about the respective partial pressures in each location. Say for example, if I say in the pulmonary veins, you know, the partial pressure for CO2 is more than partial pressure for PO2. If I say that statement, so that will be a wrong statement. So here the partial pressure is 95. Same with the case of pulmonary arteries, right? So what is more? The CO2 is more when you compare with the oxygen. Okay. So here, so from this it comes down here and it is supplied to the body circulation. And what are the exchange that is happening here? Right, the exchange that is occurring here. Right, the exchange that is occurring here is called as pulmonary respiration. Pulmonary respiration because it is happening in the lungs, or simply as I have explained in the first introductory aspect, you can call it as the external respiration. Right, the external respiration, pulmonary respiration, or simply the external respiration, and the thing that is happening in the tissues is systemic. Or internal respiration, or internal exchange of gases. Primarily, what is the driving force? What is the driving force of this exchange is the partial pressures. Right? In each location, there is difference in the partial pressures. Say for example, if you take here, what is the difference? What is the difference here? Is here we have more of oxygen, and in the tissues you have less. So this one, O2, 40. There is a huge difference here, 104 and 40. 104 and 40. So that is why the oxygen will be placed in this pulmonary capillaries. And it is brought down here. It will come to the left artery and to the ventricle.